All right, so the 2025 NBA Draft Lottery is officially in the books, and we now have the full order 1 through 30. And man, was it a big time surprise. Just going ahead and commenting on that alone. I mean, you really couldn't write up really a better script for the NBA to have the Dallas Mavericks midseason trading away their star player Luka Doncic, and then with 1.8% within the draft lottery, jumping up 10 spots and grabbing the number one overall pick to potentially grab a generational type talent in Cooper Flag. Not only that, but you have a lot of teams that potentially with one or two more pieces could be contending playoff teams like the Spurs, the Sixers, and whatnot, jumping up to 2 and 3 respectively, and teams like Utah and Washington falling to 5 and 6 and missing out on the top prospects within this draft. And unfortunately, in my opinion, this just shows kind of why I don't 100% agree with the draft lottery, because there is the chance, whether this was scripted or not, and I'm not somebody who really likes to go out and say that the NBA scripts things, but I can't lie, this draft lottery was a little bit suspect. But teams like Charlotte, Utah, and Washington, who need these big time players to go ahead and move them forward and improve their squad, they're not going to get the opportunity. And after having horrid seasons, this is what they're rewarded with. I don't know. I like the thought of having a chance to be able to get the number one pick, but I also do not like when these situations happen. I mean, even teams like Brooklyn down here at number 8, who, were in the running for top 3, they fall down to 8. They might not even get, a top 6, 7 prospect within this draft. That's a big time possibility within this. So that's that's kind of the love hate relationship with the draft lottery, right? There is some fun stuff that happens, like with what happened last night, and having so many teams jump up and having that opportunity. But at the same time, if you're one of these bottom teams and you end up getting pushed to the side, that's a big blow, because you just pretty much had a wasted losing season for nothing, and you have almost nothing to show for it. But despite that, the 2025 NBA draft is still a pretty stacked class. Not really any standouts when it comes to the depth of the class. I think that there definitely is a cutoff around that top 7 to top 8 range. But there still is a lot of really solid difference makers within this draft that a lot of teams are going to have the opportunity to get. And like you guys know, this is my favorite time of year. So why not one day after the draft lottery go ahead and do a full lottery NBA mock draft 1 through 14. So before we get into it, before I waste any more of your time, if you're watching this on YouTube, please feel free to subscribe, leave a like, comment, and share with your friends. All of that is going to be down below, as well as all of the ads to all of our social medias, that being Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter. We're on all of those social medias. You will not only get to know whenever the podcast uploads, but you'll get to see my reaction to breaking news within the NFL and the NBA. I'm super excited for the playoff season and draft season to come together, and for us to start shelling out so much new content. So stay updated, get to see my breaking news reactions, get to go through all that. Go ahead and follow all of those. So let's not waste any more of your guys' time. Let's hop into this with the number 1 overall pick with the Dallas Mavericks. Big time surprise. And they go ahead and they don't surprise anyone and go and get Cooper Flag out of Duke. The man who for the entire year has been the consensus number 1 overall prospect within this draft. And you can definitely see why. The man is, a 5-tool type of player. He is absolutely amazing on the defensive end, on both the perimeter and surprisingly down low within the paint. His rim protection, along with guys like Anthony Davis, Derek Lively, and Daniel Gafford, is going to be huge for Dallas, especially when you have somebody like Kyrie Irving, who at times can have a little bit of a weakness at that point guard position with defense. They're going to be able to cover that up, and especially with Kyrie coming off of injury, this is going to help even more. But just besides that, this is really a big-time bridge type of player that you want to have on your squad with the position that Dallas is in. They're obviously competing as of right now. That's what the Luka trade was all about. They felt that Anthony Davis would give them a better opportunity to compete with his defensive versatility. But Cooper is also somebody that once Anthony Davis is gone, once Kyrie Irving is gone, once, even potentially a guy like Daniel Gafford is gone, because he's been asking for a big-time contract from Dallas, Cooper is going to be somebody that's going to be able to pick up that flag and continue on this Dallas Mavericks team into that next generation for them. And he's going to be the guy who, in that next generation, is going to be your number one player, your star guy, your go to. He shoots really well. He handles the ball. The dude is a big, big time winner. Sure, there have been a couple of little pressure situations where maybe he's come up a little bit short. But overall, I mean, he pretty much dominated college basketball this year. And it's no secret to why he is the number one overall pick in this draft. Moving on to number 2 overall with the San Antonio Spurs. Again, another real surprise to go ahead and jump up into the top 3. And I almost feel like that this trade is destined to be traded. I mean, of course, there have been talks about a Giannis Antetokounmpo trade for the number 2, and they also have the number 14th overall pick at the end of the lottery. And we're going to go ahead and we're also going to have a video coming out very soon of that type of scenario really playing out. But if they do stay here at number 2, you still have some big time playmakers, mostly the number 2 consensus guy in this draft, which is Dylan Harper. And I think that this is going to end up being the pick either way. I would potentially entertain maybe potentially somebody like an Ace Bailey, but I also think that you have a lot of guys like Ace on your team, like Harrison Barnes, like Keldon Johnson. I think that the big time question right now with the Spurs is, if they get Dylan Harper, how are you going to put him together with guys like Stephon Castle, De'Aaron Fox? Even if you don't trade for Giannis, guys like Devin Vassell and whatnot, how are you going to be able to really make this work? But Harper, he's definitely a little bit versatile. He has some size to him. He is a big time playmaking guard, but has also shown some ability to score. So I think the question for the guards in San Antonio is who is going to step up and be your big time scorer, and then who is going to be your distributor. I think that Harper could definitely play that scoring role, and then maybe guys like Castle and De'Aaron Fox step up more on the playmaking side, and then Vassell joins Dylan Harper in that scoring role. I think it could also go the opposite way, where Harper becomes your playmaker, and then Fox goes out and becomes your 20 plus per game scorer. Castle gets in, a couple of 15, 16 points per game performances. So there is versatility there. There is depth there at the guard position. It's all going to be about how do you make that work and how much can they really rotate these guys in with getting them some meaningful minutes on the court. But Harper, no doubt, is the number 2 guy in this class. Again, just an all-around, really, really solid player. Can score the basketball, can handle really well, works good off the pick and roll, has length and size where he can defend on the perimeter and sometimes hold the zone on the block. Spurs get themselves another big-time point guard behind Fox and Castle. Then you move to the 76ers at number 3, and I think that they go ahead and they get the heir to Paul George, and that's definitely going to be Ace Bailey. It's going to depend on if they want to move on from Paul George potentially within this offseason and then, plug in Bailey as their full-time starter. But if not, I think that Bailey is going to be great behind Paul George, and I think that's really what a guy like Bailey needs, because he was potentially the consensus number 2 overall pick. He had been for a while, but over time there were some weaknesses and flaws beginning to show. He is somebody who is a big time playmaker, big time scorer. He makes some really, really difficult shots if you watch some of his tape against Rutgers, but he can be pretty inconsistent at times. He can turn the ball over. His handle is quite loose, and there have been times where he's been beat off the dribble defensively off of the perimeter and has been able to get taken to the rack. So some of those things are definitely the biggest holes within Bailey's game, and I think that sitting behind guys like Paul George, who are those two-way type wings, and is somebody who over time has been able to improve his shooting, that could potentially benefit him and not having to play in a big-time role right away. Even if they want Bailey to start, I think that he also has the potential versatility with his athleticism and size to, maybe play at a 4 position and maybe just be a big-time rebounder down there. He showed some ability to be able to rebound at Rutgers, so maybe that's a role that he could play in. But overall, I think that the key for the Sixers with this draft pick is just not rushing him, not rushing Ace Bailey, being able to cover up some of those weaknesses, improving the consistency within the shooting, tightening up some of his mechanics when it comes to his dribbling, even his shot at times, and especially extending him out past the three-point line, and just making him a much more consistent guy defensively, being able to move his feet better rather than just gambling. But again, you get another big-time prospect at number 3 when you were, down at, the 12th, 11th, type odds. Big time here for Philly. You then move to the Charlotte Hornets at number 4, a team that I'm really, really excited to see in this draft. And I think that VJ Edgecombe makes the most sense here. There have been a lot of comparisons to Victor Oladipo, and I think that that really, really matches up here because VJ, I don't think that his offense is really the highlight of his game. While he is definitely a really solid, offensive player, and he's shown that Oladipo type of leap, right, where he's making these highlight type dunks. He's able to drive past anyone that he chooses to, and he has shown that developed game like Oladipo had in Indiana of a more developed, jump shooting game. While that can be a little bit inconsistent, he has shown that side to him. But I definitely think that the defense is the big thing out of this. The defense and the athleticism. And, that's big, especially when you're talking about LaMelo Ball, who doesn't try as hard defensively, who is injured a lot of times, and that brings a big hole at that point guard position. Having VJ, having a Brandon Miller, having a Mark Williams, those three together, that is great length, and that alone can cover up those defensive weaknesses on the Hornets team. Not to mention some of the guys that they have, like Grant Williams and whatnot. That just adds to that. And VJ is definitely somebody that could take that ball into his hands as well on the offensive end and be able to just drive to the basket, which could potentially be good to get some of the attention off LaMelo as well, and maybe using LaMelo as a little bit more of an off-ball guard, being able to use his three-point shooting and whatnot, and some of his playmaking skills, being able to drive off of late closeouts that VJ gets to pass out to him. LaMelo attacks off of late closeouts and then finds a man there. The athleticism, the length, the attack dog that you're getting with VJ Edgecombe all around, it could be very, very scary. And Charlotte slowly, they do need to continue to, put these pieces together. But you're starting to build a pretty scary young core between Ball, Edgecombe, Miller, Mark Williams. There's a potential that Williams could be traded for another young piece, maybe if they want to make the Connect deal again. So you add in Don Connect into that. But slowly but surely, Charlotte is starting to build a little bit of an underrated, scary, dark horse type of young core, and VJ is definitely going to fit right in there, and also allows Brandon Miller to slide a little bit more into his more natural small forward position in my eyes. Now, the Utah Jazz at 5. This is kind of the first pivot point of the draft, and I think that this could go in a bunch of different directions. I think that the natural want would be Trey Johnson here, right? Tankathon has Utah going with Trey Johnson as 5. I think the CBS mock drafts, both Kyle Boone and Adam Fickleston have Trey Johnson go at 5. But to me, it's just not that big of a need. Like, guard is so filled out for Utah right now. You have Collier, you have Keontae George. They drafted Cody Williams last year. You have a lot of really great shooting guard depth. Colin Sexton, who I didn't even begin to mention. I think that it would be nice to get somebody more in the front court where you could potentially use some of the front court versatility that you have with guys like John Collins and Kyle Filipowski and even Taylor Hendrick, and move them more to more of a natural power forward position, and then having both Kessler and, in my eyes, Derek Queen at the center position. And I'm very, very high on Queen. He is one of my favorite prospects personally in this draft. I just think that the playmaking skills that he shows at his size, at his position, his ability to beat bigger centers off the dribble from the perimeter is definitely something that we have rarely seen. It does make me look at guys like Karl Anthony Towns and Nikola Jokic, who have shown similar success in that age. But Queen has definitely also shown some solid athleticism when it comes to rim protecting down low, getting out of the pick and roll. There are some kinks that you have to really work out there with him, but overall, I mean, the dude he can play everywhere. He has solid shooting from the outside that you could definitely work on. I think that the three-point shooting is definitely more of a stretch than it is more with the mid-range game, and there is a little bit of lack of size there. But the versatility that you're going to have, the playmaking ability, let these guards, guys like Williams, guys like Sexton, guys like Markkanen, guys like Isaiah Collier, let them just go out and score the basketball, and have Queen kind of start off with the ball a little bit more, maybe do some dribble handoff actions, right? Maybe have them attacking to the hole and then kicking out to these guys for 3. Those are the opportunities that are going to be opening up to you if you have a Derek Queen at center. And so while, there is scoring prowess with guys like Fears and Trey Johnson, I think that Queen is just a little bit more of a cleaner fit, and I definitely think that his versatility will allow you to move guys around to where you see them to fit within your lineup. Which moves to the Washington Wizards at number 6. And again, Trey Johnson, Jeremiah Fears, definitely looking at you in the face. And I like both of those guys, but I do definitely think that after trading, guys like Kyle Kuzma, Denny Avdija, you obviously have Chris Middleton on your team, but he's not going to be a long-term solution. I do think that you need to look more towards a guy at that 3 spot. I think that Concanopoulos fits in there right. I mean, you want to talk about big-time scoring, big-time shooting. Knoble definitely fills that slot right there. If you take a look at this, Tankathon has his 17 points per game, 4.7 rebounds. The dude also shown an ability to have the ball in his hands, 40% from the three-point line, nearly 50% from the field. I mean, this is a dude that's going to be a big-time scorer and is somebody that could combine with somebody like a Jordan Poole and also play alongside length like a Alex Sarr. I think that he's just a really solid bridge within the middle to go ahead and make all of this work. He's shown ability to work with the ball in his hands, but he doesn't need the ball in his hands. And I think that that's super, super important when you have, ball dominant guys like Jordan Poole and whatnot. Get somebody that is fine with being off ball, but could also work off of the dribble and just go out and get you big time scoring numbers. So Utah and Washington definitely, they got pegged down a little bit, but still able to get some really, really solid prospects. And there's still, potential for them to go out and get a Trey Johnson, who in my eyes is a top 5 prospect. And that is why I don't have him going any farther than number 7 in this draft. And I'm actually going to go back to back with these picks with Trey Johnson and Jeremiah Fears at 7 and 8 respectively. And that's because I think that both of these guys really bring the same thing to the table, and that is just scoring. They are just natural 3-level scorers. I think that Fears has the most weakness in his game when it comes to, potential inconsistency and defense. Johnson is more, your prototypical 2-way shooting guard where, 3-level scorer, but also has shown athleticism and length on the opposite end to really move his feet. And for New Orleans, it's really the most interesting pick in my eyes at this point in the draft because we don't know really what's going to happen there. Is there going to be potentially some sweepstakes where they're trading guys like Herb Jones and Trey Murphy and Zion Williamson and DeJounte Murray and whatnot and CJ McCollum? We've thought that was going to happen during the midseason at the NBA trade deadline. It didn't end up happening. So now you have a lot of big-time talent, but you add somebody like Trey Johnson, who, again, similar to Cooper Flagg, I think could definitely be a bridge type of prospect where if you keep all those guys, he's somebody that you could add in, and especially with somebody like DeJounte Murray coming off of injury, CJ McCollum getting a lot older, Herb Jones, Trey Murphy dealing with some injury, he's definitely a guy that could step in and be your top scorer. But he's also a guy, if all those guys work out and they end up playing, could be an amazing guy off the bench to just learn. And then when those guys are gone, either being traded away, either, leaving in free agency or whatever ends up happening, could plug in, in 3 or 4 years and be your top level shooting guard guy. Again, I have him as a top 5 prospect. I just think that Utah is better off, going with somebody like a Queen because of the versatility. But Johnson is definitely, a top level prospect within this, and I love him in New Orleans. And similar for Fears, I think that Brooklyn can go any direction in this. Again, you hate to see them falling to 8, and I think that as of right now, the wing depth with Trey Johnson being off the field, I think the wing depth has really, really suffered. I think your next best bet would be to go for somebody potentially like a Liam McNeely down at 19 who gives you some solid scoring right there. But Fears is next up. Russell is definitely not a long-term fix for you. D'Angelo Russell is not a long-term fix for them. You have Cam Thomas there, so combining Fears, Thomas, you have some defensive capability in that front court with guys like, Noah Clowney and Nick Claxton and whatnot, and there's still a lot of really great young talent on this Brooklyn team. They just really need to develop them and realize their potential. But Fears added in, I think that he could be a point guard that could potentially start day one, if not play behind Russell and learn from him. And I think that they are still able to get them a really, really solid prospect at number 8. Number 9 with the Toronto Raptors. This is a no-brainer for me. It's Kamon Maluak out of Duke, the center. I think that is the biggest need for Toronto right now. Just somebody to purely play next to Scotty Barnes at that 4 position and just create a defensive front court monster, right, between Malawak and Scotty Barnes, but is somebody who also, at Duke was able to play out of the pick and roll, solidly, and when you have guys like Emmanuel Quickly and RJ Barrett who like to get downhill, who like to go towards the basket more, Malawak can definitely play that game, get in the pick and roll, throw him some lobs. He'll be great in rim protection and whatnot. So overall, really solid fit here for the Raptors. Pro Football and Sports Network have him ranked number 4. I definitely wouldn't rank him that high in terms of prospects. I do think that he's top 10, so I think that they get him with solid value here. But overall, it's just somebody that is going to tear stuff up in the paint on both sides and just be an absolute mismatch. Number 10 for the Rockets, and I hate to see them in this position because I don't know how much more you can really give them. And I think that they really need to potentially look at trading this pick as well to go out and getting any type of veteran help because I think that that's what they really need. I think that they just are lacking experience, and that's why they went out against Golden State. But the other biggest reason why they went out against Golden State was their shooting, and that's why I'm giving them Liam McNeely. Him and Jace Richardson were the two that I was really looking at because I think that they give you the most three-point consistency from that back line. McNeely, we can go ahead and see right here from Tankathon at the small forward position, 16.3 points per game. He did only shoot 31% from the field, and I know that a guy like Jace Richardson, was shooting, nearly 40%. But I just don't think that there's really a need right now at guard with guys like, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Fred VanVleet, Cam Whitmer coming off of that bench for the Rockets. I mean, you can look it up right here. Just look at how much depth they really have at this guard position. VanVleet, Dylan Brooks, Jalen Green, Amen Thompson. You still have Reed Shepherd, who wasn't even able to get playing time on this squad. So I think that you need more of a forward here, somebody with some solid experience, some solid shooting, and I think that McNeely fits in right there. Here with Portland at 11, I think that it has to be a forward for them, and I think it's somebody that needs to bring more defense to their side. So I'm between that, Austin Newell and Colin Murray Boyles are definitely two guys that are very similar in game. I prefer Colin Murray on this. I just think that he's the more polished prospect, especially offensively around the rim and whatnot. And he's the person that has the most offensive potential out of the two, which you definitely don't want somebody who's a liability offensively, even if you're focusing on a more defensive player. But sits at 6'7", is very, very crafty down low there on the block. Played a really solid role down there for South Carolina. Tankathon has them going with Austin Newell. But if you look at Murray Boyles, nearly 20 points per game, was able to log in, basically 10 rebounds, so a double-double type guy. Feeded in 1.6 blocks as well. Has a year as well on Austin Newell. I mean, I think that overall he's just one more step ahead of Newell in terms of development and whatnot. And you now have a squad that has Clingan and Murray Boyles in that front court. You have Scoot Henderson, Shaden Sharp, and Fernie Simons within that backcourt. You're looking to improve more on that forward game, which Boyles definitely helps out there. But this is a really, really solid plug-in. Gives them some much, much needed defense. The Chicago Bulls, they end up getting lucky in this mock draft because they get a top 6 level prospect, and that's Kasparis Jackjunas. I think that the fall of him just comes to guys like Johnson and Fears having much more offensive potential than him. And then guys like Toronto, Houston, and Portland not really needing a lead point guard. I don't necessarily think that Chicago needs Kasparis because you have guys like Giddey and Kobe White who kind of play those roles, but he's kind of just the best player available by far at this moment. I think that it would be sacrilegious just to not really pick him here. Number 6, you get double his value down there at number 12. Playing next to guys like Kobe, Kobe White can still be your main time scorer. He could definitely go out and make a lot more. And he has also shown ability as a 3-level scorer to be able to score from the 3-point line. It just hasn't been very, very consistent. But a bigger guard gives you some length. I would like for them to potentially to address the front court. So maybe somebody like Asa Newell, you look a little bit further down the draft to potentially like a Rasheer Fleming at power forward, maybe a Ryan Kalkbrenner, although I think that this is way too early for Kalkbrenner at this spot. I would like to see them address front court, but when this type of value comes here at 12, maybe they could potentially trade this pick as well if Caspers is available and there's, value there to be traded for. So Bulls get themselves the playmaker that they need to distribute to their big-time scorers. I think that this is a solid pick for them at number 12. And then finally for 13 and 14, for 13 for the Hawks, I think that they're in a very similar situation as Portland is. I think that they need forwards to play next to Capella, next to Jalen Johnson. I think that you have enough scoring with guys like Reece Shea and Trae Young, and you need to be able to address those defensive weaknesses with those two guys. And Newell can definitely do that. Also was able to show nearly 20 points per game scoring. So, he's just not all defense. As somebody who's very versatile, defensively sound, sits, at 6'10", so he can play that center position. And I think that he has a little bit more, offensive upside and whatnot. So play him in there. You now have really great length between Capella, Johnson, and Newell all in that front court. You let Reece Shea and Trae Young play their scoring roles and just let them, have the ball. Newell definitely won't get in the way of that. Could play out the pick and roll as well, which would be really great for Trae Young and be another asset to him. I think that's good at 13. And then finally, to end it out at 14, I think that, San Antonio again this year at 14. Again, I think that this pick could potentially be traded, but they could go in a lot of different ways. Jace Richardson offers a lot of really good three-point scoring. Even a guy like Miles Bird. Cam Jones gives you another great playmaker. I even look at a guy like Nick Clifford, who potentially gives you some versatility at that small forward, power forward position, but could also score really well and is a good defender. But overall, I ended up going with Noah Asengwe. I believe the fellow Frenchman, if I'm correct. Is he French? Let's see what they have on their big board here. Yeah, he is French. So the fellow Frenchman of Victor Wembanyama. And this guy, Noah, he is overall, just defense for them. As somebody who is a little bit more similar to Keldon Johnson, but I think that Johnson has a more well-rounded offensive game. But as somebody that could play next to Jeremy Shohan if you need to just shut somebody down and go into a defensive type lineup. And I mean, if they don't end up trading this pick, if they trade number 2 and are able to get out of trade number 14, could you imagine Asengwe, Giannis, Victor Wembanyama, potentially Jeremy Shohan in there? I mean, that would be absolutely dangerous. So again, 14, there's not a lot of amazing value here, but I think that Asengwe with his defense, with his versatility, could definitely be a solid pick right there. And that's all I have for you guys today. That was the full NBA mock draft of the lottery so far with the new draft lottery, 1 through 14 standings for the draft, or I guess slots for the draft. Let me know what you guys think about it. Go ahead, again, if you think that I got anything right, got anything wrong, let me know who do you think is going where, who do you think is your biggest sleeper, who do you think could potentially fall, who is your favorite player in this draft. Go ahead and leave all those in the comment section below, as well as like, subscribe, and share with your friends. And if you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on all social medias, that being TikTok, Instagram, and Twitter. All of the ads are going to be down below. And without further ado, guys, that is going to be all from me today. I will see you guys on the next one. Peace.